The first condition we're going to write ourselves is regarding one questionnaire. Here we have a number of questions, and we have the user giving answers to these. There are also the correct answers that have been listed, and the first simple condition will be we're going to check whether the user has given the correct answer. The question is, when was the first personal computer produced? And the correct answer is 1976. It was produced by Apple, actually, which by now is the world's best known trademark, but was a smaller company in the in between the 70s and now. And let's write equals, and let's compare H7, which is the correct answer. We're going to compare H7 with F7, which is the answer that's been given by the user of our worksheet. So we're comparing H7 with F7 equals H7 equals F7, and since the answer was given correctly, the computer answers true. What we can do next is we can copy this formula to once again show how copying was done. We're gonna click on the formula, go to the right lower corner and click and drag, and we're gonna copy all those formulas, and we can see that two answers have been given in a correct way. We're gonna look further into these questions later on, but the rest of the answers have not been given at all, so these are false at the moment. Of course, the user shouldn't see the correct answers when giving his own. So what we do next is we are going to right click on this H label up on the H column, and we're going to select. There's a bunch of things we can do. We can actually copy or paste the entire column all at once when we need that. We can delete a column or insert a new one, but here what we want to do is we want to hide this column. Here it is. Now the correct answers have been hidden. And just to show how to unhide a column that's been hidden, we're going to have to click on G and then click and drag until I, so up there on the headers of the column, and right click when we've selected all this range in which the hidden column is, and select unhide. Okay. Now let's go to more complex comparisons, and for that we will first need to go over how to give names in Microsoft Excel. So it was this way that we select these eight cells and give formulas create from selection. Formulas create from selection, and the answer given by Microsoft Excel this time is not true. I'm sorry, it's incorrect, what I mean to say. So we have names only in the left column, so this bottom row, which it suggests, is not correct. Let's just leave left column checked, and let's click OK. So what it wanted to do, it actually wanted to give the name letter like this. So left column, once again, left column meant that it finds the names on the left column and gives it to the right column, which means that this cell here is called code. And here it is. It wanted to give the name letter in a completely wrong way. Sometimes it messes things up. Now the first comparison we're going to do is actually going to be whether a liquid, which would have to be water, which would best be water, is from 0 to under 100, which means that it's greater than or equals to 0, and it's strictly smaller than 100. Remember that if it's under 0, it would start freezing. If it would be equal to 100, it would start boiling. So the liquid is in liquid form. It's not frozen nor evaporated. So let's write equals, and we have to break this more complex comparison into two parts. The first is, we're beginning with AND function, and parentheses begin. Now the first part of the comparison is 0 is smaller than or equals to now. We've given the name so it works, and we compare it to be at least 0. Semicolon separates the two parts of this AND function, and now we write now is smaller, strictly smaller, not smaller than or equals to 100. And we can close these parentheses, and here it is. The first seems to be true, since the temperature now is 33 centigrade. Okay, the next comparison is gonna be weather, and this time we're not using numbers like we did. We'll talk about that later on more. We're using the formula to check whether now is between hot and cold. Still, cold is 15, hot is 25, now is 33, so the answer should be false. Let's write it equals, and parentheses begin, and we write cold is strictly smaller than now, semicolon, now is smaller than hot. So we've once again broken this comparison into two, and we're comparing it bit by bit. Remember that we have to write it all out each time. It's not that, write it shorter. And now let's continue with a different check. We want to know whether a temperature now is less than or equal to cold, that is, the temperature might be cold, or whether the temperature is greater than or equal to hot. So, in other words, we want to check whether it's cold or hot, which could be phrased like, we want to check whether the temperature is not moderate. That's what we're checking right now. So let's start writing it down. There's actually a bit of a mistake here. I think it's better style if we write the bigger than or equal to the way we should write it in Microsoft Excel. Remember, always the bigger sign, the smaller sign comes before equals. Let's write it in correct style. And now, let's start. Equals, and since we want to check whether it's cold or it's hot, we are going to use a new function, and this function is called OR. Let's write equals OR, parentheses begin, and let's just write down the first bit. Now is smaller than or equals to cold. Here we're just using here the fact whether we're using smaller or smaller equals is just arbitrary. We wanted to put it this way. There is no strict explanation. And the second part, semicolon, we check for hot temperatures as well as cold. Now is bigger than or equals to hot. And let us remember that OR will actually work if already one of those works. If it's cold and the first part works, OR will give us true. If it's hot and the second part works, OR will give us true as well. If neither of them works, if it's not cold, if it's not hot, OR of course will give us false. There is actually also an option that both will work. Not in this formula's case. In this formula, it can't at the same time be below 25 and over 30, below 15 and over 25. But there are formulas in which actually both parts of the OR can work at the same time, and then of course the OR works. For instance, the example would be, let's say that that you are exempt from some kind of a tax if your tax sum is if your income is very small, or if you're a pensioner. Then in that case you can be both a pensioner and have a small income. In that case you're exempt if your small income person or a pensioner. You can be both, then it will work as well. So that's an example of both holding in case of or. Now it seems to be true because the temperature is hot and the second part of or actually got realized. And the last example here would be the one in which we want to make free comparisons. Let's say we have another test here, and the answer to the test has been given as X. Well, someone didn't choose to answer at all. But the correct answers to that test were either, were A, B, C. So these were the correct answers to the test. Now let's check. Let's say E, D, F, these were all wrong answers. And we want to avoid the points only in the case of A, B, and C. Let's write equals. And now what we have to really carefully consider is whether we're using and or in here. It turns out we use or. The reason is that we're checking the letter to be A, B, C. It can't at the same time be A and B and C. It has to be A or B or C. So sometimes we have to figure out whether it's and or ourselves. Let's write or, parenthesis begin, and let's write letter equals, and we're checking for A now. This is the first time we're writing text out like this. The correct way of writing and checking whether the cell letter here equals to A is to put A in quotation marks. Here it is. A is in quotation marks. Then Microsoft Excel really knows that it's text A. If we had omitted these quotation marks, Excel would have thought that we mean a cell named A, but we really mean text A, text within the cell, let's say. Because this letter here, for instance, is a cell named letter. Okay, let's put semicolon. Now for the second check, whether it's perhaps a B, let's write semicolon, and we want, once again, we have to write every time everything once over again. Letter, we cannot just write equals B, we have to write letter equals quotation marks B, and we're checking for letter B. And semicolon, letter equals quotation marks C. And now we're done with the formula. It turns out that we can put 4 or 5 things within and, within or, we can do it easily.